Welcome to today's program of Free to Fly. The title of my message today is Preferring the Wilderness. For those of you who joined me last week, you might remember that what we discussed last week was about God's detours and how He led the people out of Israel, out of bondage, out of slavery from the land of Egypt. He took them to, instead of directing them through the shortcut, where they would have had to war against the Philistines into the promised land, He directed them through the wilderness and through the Red Sea, where God showed them His goodness even during a season of nothing, during a season of dryness. He also was with them and fought their battle even when they faced the challenge of the Red Sea and many other challenges. And today what we're going to look at is whether if we are facing a wilderness, whether we prefer the wilderness to the promised land. Shall we turn in our Bibles to Numbers chapter 14 and read from verses 20 to 25. Numbers 14, 20 to 25. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwelt in the valley. Tomorrow turn you, and get you into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Now these are the words of God and His direction to the people of Israel. And we saw that where God said, not one of you will enter the promised land. Perhaps you're wondering, God, what is this all about? This is a land that you promised hundreds of years before. The people of Israel were in slavery for 400 years in the land of Egypt. You took them out and you directed them through this route because you wanted to show them who you were and you wanted to reveal to them who they were in you. And now, after all this, they had eventually come to the place where God directed them to send spies into this land, into the promised land. And therefore what Moses did was that he sent a group of 12, each one from each tribe, in order to spy this land. And they were there for 40 days. But as we saw, God said, not one of you, this entire generation will pass, but not one will enter the promised land. Only Joshua and Caleb from that entire generation were permitted to enter the promised land. How did this happen? What went wrong? As we saw last week, God in His goodness and His love, He knew that these people were not prepared to face battle. He knew that if He took them on this shortcut, that they will face, the moment they faced the Philistines in war, that they will turn back and say, we have to go back to Egypt. There is no possible way that we can face them, and that they will go back to the land of Egypt. And therefore, God led them through what we saw is a detour, through the wilderness and through the Red Sea. And God had revealed through those years, or however long it was, God had revealed to them who He was. God had done amazing miracles in their midst, in their lives, individually and as a group. They had experienced the goodness of the Lord. And now it came to the test. It came to the point where the Israelites had to go and spy out this land and see various details. How many people were there? Were they strong? Was the land fortified? Could be what kind of fruit was there in the land? Is it actually a land flowing with milk and honey? There were so many things that these 12 spies went, and in fact they came with a good report. They came back saying, this land is exceedingly good. The fruit of it is great. It is a land flowing with milk and honey. This is an amazing promise of God. It is truly fantastic. Yet, they said, but there are giants in this land, and we seem like grasshoppers to them. We look like grasshoppers, and they also thought that to them also we look like grasshoppers. So therefore, what the Israelites did was that at this point where they were facing a test, where God had prepared them so much and revealed to him who he was, the strength that they could have in him, and then it came to this point where they were tested. And they were told to go into this land and see what do you see there? Go and possess the land. And the people of Israel returned and said, this land is amazing, but we cannot go. No chance that we can possess it because it is infested with giants. There is no way we can conquer them. In fact, they had forgotten the goodness of God. They had forgotten every miracle that God had done in their lives. It was completely just gone. It was as if God had not done anything. They had forgotten the way God delivered them with mighty miracles from the land of Egypt. They had forgotten how they in fact crossed the Red Sea, where God did an amazing miracle and parted the Red Sea, and they were able to cross over. They had forgotten his provision, his care over the years, that he had kept to his word. He had never let go of them. They had forgotten every good thing that God had done. And now it came to a point where they came back. They said, we are like grasshoppers, and even to them we look like grasshoppers. Now, did they ask them? Did they talk to them? How did they come to that conclusion? They just analyzed the situation and they came to a conclusion. We look like grasshoppers even to them. But do you know what the word of God says? In the book of Joshua chapter 2 verses 8 to 10, it explains how later on, eventually when Joshua and the people of Israel, the next generation, were entering the promised land and there were spies sent, Rahab, who was in the land of Jericho, was explaining to these spies and said, you know, we heard about what your God had done, and our entire nation, everyone in this land was fearful and they were trembling because of you, because of what your God had done for you all. And that is what the people in the promised land, the giants who were there, what they actually perceived was that they did not really think of them as grasshoppers. Yet the people of Israel had analyzed it. They did not look through the eyes of God. They did not look at it in the way that God would want them to, and taking God into the equation. Instead, they simply calculated with their own minds. And they thought, this land is good, yes, it is fantastic, but there is no way that we can overcome these. We are going to be defeated. We will all die if we go and enter this land. We don't want to go there. And therefore, what they did was that they came back, and after 40 days, they came back and they spread a bad report about the land, the promised land, the land that they had been looking forward to enter for so many years. These spies came back and spread a bad report, so that all the people of Israel believed in that bad report and began complaining once again. They started complaining and grumbling and saying, oh, we should have died back there in Egypt. We should have died here in the desert. Why should we go to this land and then be killed by the sword by these people? We don't want to go there. They began to grumble and complain about how bitter their lives were, and it was only Joshua and Caleb who took a stand and who said, yes, they may be big, but our God is bigger. Their protection is gone, but our God is with us, and He will take us to the land. We will possess the land. Don't be afraid. That is why God was able to say that they are of a different spirit. Do you find yourself in a wilderness today? Do you find yourself in a place where it is a detour, where God has taken you on a detour because of His goodness, because He wants you to experience His blessing and to be able to retain it, but you are facing a wilderness, a time where nothing is happening? What is your attitude during this season? I want to challenge you to consider, to think about it, that your attitude and your response during this season could determine whether you stay in this wilderness for the rest of your life or whether you will in fact possess the promised land. God never intended that the people of Israel should remain in the wilderness for 40 years. No way did He ever intend that. He only wanted that to be a season where He will reveal Himself to them so that they will be prepared to possess the promised land. He was simply waiting to bless them with everything good that He had in store for them. And similarly, God is waiting. I believe that God is waiting to bless you with every good thing that He has planned out for you. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can comprehend the good things that God has prepared for those of us who love Him. He is waiting to bless you with every good thing. He is waiting to bless you with a revelation of who He is. He is waiting to bless you with more than you can possibly imagine. But what is your response? Are you turning your back on Him today and saying, God, whatever you have, I don't want it because it does not seem to be good? God, I am scared. There is no way you can take me through this one. It doesn't matter what you may have done in the past. It is completely immaterial, but no way that you can take me through this. Have we come to a conclusion about God like that? Like the people of Israel. They had experienced His goodness in so many ways, yet they chose in this instance to completely distrust Him and to say, God, you can't help us. We don't want this land. We don't care whether you've promised it to us for 100 years or not, for hundreds of years. We are not interested. We don't want to go. It's better for us to have stayed in Egypt. It is better for us to have died here in the desert. Do you want to remain in the wilderness for the rest of your life? Or do you want to possess the promised land? I believe the choice is up to you. When God has brought you to a place where you are ready to possess the promised land, you may not be aware of it. But what is your attitude? Are you praising God like Joshua and Caleb did? Are you trusting Him and believing in Him? Are you a person of a different spirit? Like God was able to say of Caleb, he is a person of another spirit. Can God say the same about you? Or are you like every other Israelite other than for Joshua and Caleb? Every one of them who complained against God, who were bitter, who distrusted Him. When we are facing similar seasons where we are going through a wilderness, we may have experienced everything about God and what He can do, what He has done in our lives. Yet we may be responding like the Israelites. As God said in verse 22, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and now they have tempted me these 10 times, and they have not hearkened to my voice. Are we like that? We have seen the glory of God. We have experienced His presence in our lives.